And g'day and welcome. It's Benjamin Morgan, Chief Executive of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association of Australia, and I welcome you to our Thursday, 18th of November 2021 broadcast. Tonight we're going to be catching up with stakeholders, aviation stakeholders from Lismore Airport to learn more about what is happening at their local community airport, which is said to be under the threat of possible closure or unnecessary restriction as a consequence of both the noise lobby and decisions being made by the local council. Like all these issues, we have so many of these local council managed airports right across Australia that are at risk through a lack of understanding of the complexities of aviation and the delicate nature of the aviation industry. And work needs to be done right across the board to ensure that these local councils start to develop a more finite understanding of what is actually going to make aviation work and what puts aviation at risk. So tonight's conversation is a unique and powerful insight, not into the viewpoints of AOPA Australia itself, but talking directly with the stakeholders, the people who are affected on the ground at the airport, and how these issues are impacting on their ability to participate in aviation, and what the future might look like if these changes can't be reversed and a more positive outcome achieved. Before I push too further into the broadcast, I'd just like to shout out to my beautiful partner, Laura. I'm actually getting married tomorrow, and in a schedule that is incredibly busy, I wouldn't have imagined that I would be doing a Facebook Live broadcast tonight. But nonetheless, these issues are important, and we need to ensure that the members of our aviation community are being seen. So I really do extend my thanks to Laura and the family for me making time tonight to be able to have this conversation. So thank you very much. Okay, without too much further ado, I'm bringing everybody in now. We have a huge panel discussion which is taking place tonight. With a whole multitude of people, and there's some many new faces here that I have not previously met. There are some familiar faces and some familiar voices. But maybe to kickstart tonight's discussion, what I would like to do is to be able to go around the room, and I'll get everybody to give us a brief introduction as to who they are, how they're involved in aviation at Lismore, and exactly what they see the problems to be, in short. And then what we're going to do is from that, we'll bring the panel together and we'll start putting some questions forward and learn more about the issues this evening. So without further ado, we'll bring in Mike Barnes. Mike, over to you.
Yeah, g'day guys. Michael Barnes, Chief Pilot, Rotorwing Helicopters. Also the appointed president that represents the aviation and business group at the airport here. I think first and foremost is to mention that there's just been too much credibility given to the minority that's complaining about noise. They haven't got a leg to stand on. There's absolutely no chance of closing the airport, yet they're pushing for something that's not achievable. And we need to just highlight to them that that's not even an option. We need to move forward and educate the council, whoever that is, outgoing, incoming, whatever. They need to consult with the aviation professionals that are at the airport, that know what is needed at the airport, and what we should be applying for grant-wise so that we can help develop the airport in the best interest of every one of the stakeholders and every one of the citizens of this LGA. So there's options available. We just need to be consulted with, and that's the main thing I'm pushing for, is consultation from the council. Come down and sit with us and learn. We'll teach you. We will teach you.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for making time tonight to come on camera and to speak publicly about these issues. Absolutely critical that we do talk about these issues publicly, and we make sure that people right across the aviation industry understand what's happening at a local level. And you and I have had a little bit of time to have that conversation, in which I've said to you that I feel it's absolutely imperative to the future of our industry that we learn to talk about these issues, so that not only does the local community have an understanding, because tonight's broadcast is being directed at councillors. I believe there's a council election that's currently underway in your area. It's being directed to those councillors. It's being directed to the local newspaper and local media outlets. And I'm also making sure that this broadcast is being seen by local members and also members of the state and the members of the federal government, including our Deputy Prime Minister's office. So I do appreciate it. And I have to say, and I don't mean any offence to the older guard within the industry, it is refreshing. It is refreshing to see a young man involved in aviation, a complex side of aviation with helicopter operations, mate, a young guy in the business trying to forge a future. This is what we need to see more of, more young people having a go. So, mate, a big thumbs up from AOPA there, and I'm going to be looking forward to tonight's discussion. Now, next up for a quick introduction is none other than Mr. Nick Reese. Nick, over to you. Microphone, Nick.
Yeah, g'day. I'm the secretary of the Lismore Airport Business and Aviators Association. we've put this association together recently because of the problems we've been having, talking with council, local problems such as, aircraft noise lobby. I'm an aircraft owner and also a GA and RAAus instructor. And my main interest is just trying to get, the aviation industry, we could be one of the centres of aviation in not only New South Wales, but Australia, because we've got 4 airports in the vicinity, plus we've got Wollongbar TAFE that does, aviation studies there. And we could really be, getting ahead if we had the support of our local members and also the community. But for some reason, that has gone by the wayside in recent years. So, that's my interest, is trying to promote aviation in Lismore.
Well, Nick, again, I've had the fortune of meeting you a little bit earlier, and you and I have had quite a few conversations regarding the unfolding situation at Lismore. And again, my hat goes off to you for the enthusiasm and the passion shown for your local aviation community in wanting to bring people together to work towards a solution here. So I do appreciate that. Now, we've got Mr. Andreas Unger. Over to you, Andreas, for a background. Who are you? What's your involvement at the airport?
Well, I started my career here going to school, and then I left and went to Sydney for about 15 years to work for Qantas as an aircraft maintenance engineer, and couldn't wait to come back to the area. I've also been a trike instructor and paragliding instructor, so from the dark side. I currently fly ultralights, and I run a little maintenance business, so looking after people's aircraft. So I'm one of the local stakeholders that really would like to have the council actually come and talk to us and, use the expertise that are actually at the airport in the many, many years that people have spent and been in aviation to actually help grow it. So my frustration is that over the past 15 years, every single time we've approached the council, every single time nothing's happened, and it's just been going downhill. And now all of a sudden we have this onslaught of draconian rules and this massive deficit that the airport has, which could have been completely avoided.
Well, Andreas, it's certainly not a story that we haven't heard before. This is a situation that plays out at so many other airport locations. But let me just say, look, we need more maintainers, mate. It's great to see you at the table here. One of the biggest challenges our aviation industry will be facing post-COVID-19 is that we have lost so many licensed aircraft maintenance engineers and aircraft maintainers from the aviation ecosystem that it will actually stand to put airline operations and many facets of general aviation operation at risk. And so we need more aircraft and aviation engineers in the system. And so again, what a great opportunity for Lismore to have an aviation future where it could be building apprenticeships, it could be encouraging young people. So thank you for being at the table tonight. We really do appreciate it. Now, next in line is Mr. Jeff Mathison. I've got to bring him back to the stream there, sorry. Jeff, I didn't mean to punch you there, mate. We've got you back. Could you give us an overview? What's your involvement with the airport?
Yeah, g'day. I've been in the helicopter game for 27 years, Layman for 22. I started my business, Heli Service Australia. It's probably the newest business on the airport a year ago, in the middle of COVID, so not the best time. But my client base is my service, Westpac Rescue Helicopter, Babcock Helicopters, and a few other mobs. And I'm looking to sort of service the local community as well in the smaller to medium helicopter world as well. So my interest in the airport is great in the fact that I've only just begun the business and got all my CATA approvals. So the talk of the airport shutting is not ideal for me at all, or to grow my business.
Well, obviously, you're local to the area as well, are you, mate?
I'm on the coast, Tweed Coast, so I'm about an hour away. So I commute to the airport as required, but also travel a lot for service my clients.
Look, anyone that's been around the helicopter industry knows that with each helicopter comes a raft of aircraft maintenance engineers and support technicians. And so, again, what a great opportunity for Lismore, the local economy and the aviation industry to have that kind of investment going on. So, again, thank you very much for being here at the table this evening for this conversation. The next that I'd like to bring in is none other than Isaac Flanagan. Isaac, if you'd like to give us a bit of an overview of your involvement with Lismore Airport.
G'day. Yeah, no worries. So I'm the owner and chief pilot of Fast Aviation. We established at Lismore in 2016, and we've sort of gradually grown over that time. Now have a couple of Barons that we operate on charter and training, and plus some other airplanes we use as required. Things are going quite well. Lismore, we had a lot of support from the council, the managers, the councillors themselves, even the mayor at the time. Unfortunately, things seem to go sour over the last 12 months. What seemed to be triggered by the noise lobby was taken up by some of the councillors, I think, who sort of took it on themselves to try and push this minority agenda, which has made life difficult for businesses at the airport, not just operationally but also financially. So they made a big change to the fee structure in the middle of the year with very little consultation, which has increased our costs to operate at Lismore by factors of 10. To the point where, to be competitive in our market, we're actually looking at moving from Lismore. We've had discussions with a number of other locations, and of course, with CASA approvals and all that sort of stuff required to move, it's not going to be it's not a quick or an easy process. But we're looking on that because it's going to be an uneconomical scenario to remain at Lismore if it remains as it is at the moment.
Well, Isaac, that's a terrible situation to be put in as an aviation business, and it's certainly not one that we haven't heard previously at many privatised airports and local council managed airports across the country, where it's a bit of a race to the bottom. They move to raft in unsustainable fees and charges, thinking that it's about creating the type of income that they need to balance the books from a council perspective. But what they fail to appreciate is that it has the unintended consequence of simply forcing the businesses out. And I know, external to AOPA, I'm involved with the commercial aviation business in the jet charter world. And we're going through a lease negotiation process ourselves at Bankstown Airport. This is I have to caveat this by saying this is completely separate to my role with AOPA. And through those processes, we have to weigh up the realities of the costs of taking leases that will have deep and meaningful financial impacts on the performance of the business. And these local councils and these privatised airport operators seem to have a complete disregard for the commercial realities of what the aviation community face. And one of these great examples that I've given at local council meetings so many times, and I'll say it again because I know that the Deputy Prime Minister's office will have an opportunity to see this video. I'll say this again, that when local councils introduce fees and charges at airports, thinking that the aviation industry can just continue to pay year after year, more and more every year, what they fail to appreciate, what they fail to put into perspective is that there are only 9,600 roughly VH registered aircraft in Australia. And according to BITRA, according to the government's own statistics organisation, approximately 50% of the number of registered aircraft in Australia are actively flying. Now, if you take the scale and the size of Australia and you apply just 5,000 aeroplanes or 4,500 aeroplanes across that great vast distance, it means airport communities are not servicing thousands of aeroplanes. They are servicing very, very small numbers of aircraft that are privately owned and owned for business. And so expecting these aviation businesses at airports to pay the types of rents that you would charge Officeworks, Bunnings, McDonald's, Mitre 10, and these large companies is not sustainable. There was a reason why aviation was always fostered by the Commonwealth and it was always looked after under the FAC. And that's because aviation has very, very sensitive cost pressures to it that if they're ignored, you will in fact push aviation out, you'll bankrupt it. So I appreciate you, Isaac, coming along tonight. And I've got a raft of questions that I'm already thinking I'm going to be throwing at you straight away. Okay, next person, we've got two people left. We're going to have Gary Alcock. Gary, if you could give us a little bit of an overview of your involvement and who you're representing at the airport.
Good evening. I'm representing myself actually as a private pilot and aircraft owner. So as an aircraft owner and private pilot, I tend to resent the innuendo that council and other noisy minorities are putting across that aircraft owners are the silver tails and things like that. That's just not the case at all. It's only through hard work and sacrifice that I've given myself the opportunity to enjoy the pleasures of flying, and to suggest otherwise is just grossly inaccurate. So I enjoy the leisure sport, and it wouldn't matter whether it was a flying my own plane or joining my friends in gliding and other activities, flying activities. But yeah, as a private owner and aircraft owner, and you know, we lease our aircraft space in the airport, I think we have a right to be spoken to and consulted as a stakeholder in the airport operation.
I share those concerns, and as someone who represents aircraft owners and pilots Monday to Sunday, I hear this all too often right across the countryside, a lack of understanding of members of the community who seem to think that aviation is bad no matter what. And look, I've heard it all before. You know, you see it. You see members of the community who will take it upon themselves to make complaints to council to say, I've seen an aeroplane flying 100 foot across the roof of my house. Who hasn't heard this one before? What they fail to understand is aviation doesn't work that way. We're all flying at prescribed altitudes. We're all flying in fly neighbourly procedures. We're all flying in accordance with the law. It's all designed, by the way, to keep aviation safe. And so it's sad that those minority voices are able to clutch onto these issues and create such a headache for the aviation industry, because those members of the community often forget. And we have to train pilots. We have to train the emergency helicopter pilots who are going to go out there and put their lives at risk to fight bushfires. And I think this is often forgotten. When a pilot straps himself into a helicopter and puts on a firefighting bucket, a Bambi bucket, or an aerial firefighting piece of equipment that hangs under the helicopter, or maybe the helicopter is equipped with a water tank, the pilot, in taking that water to the fire front and flying over the fire, is putting himself at significant risk to save others. Now, he has to be trained. He has to be given the opportunity to learn how to do these things. So we all, as community, doesn't matter where we are across the country, we all take a responsibility in helping this happen, because we want to see homes protected. We want to see the air ambulance have pilots to be able to retrieve those that are going to need emergency pickups, the emergency care flight helicopters. All of these things have to be accommodated by community. Now, just in the same way that communities allow freeways, they allow highways, they allow roads, and this is often a situation that I raise at a meeting, and I'll say, okay, the community's saying they've got a concern with the occasional Cessna flying overhead. You don't seem to have a problem with the B-double driving through the middle of your town, because you seem to understand that transporting sheep, transporting fuel, transporting oil, transporting supplies, making sure the local Woolworths is full, everyone seems to understand the needs of roads. And roads, by far, if you took noise measuring equipment and you put a piece of noise measuring equipment on the front doorstep of a house that adjoins a major road arterial, the noise that those cars and trucks make is far louder than any helicopter or any aircraft will ever make. But they lose sight of this and they clutch onto these issues. And quite often by residents who will buy a house in proximity to an aerodrome, they move in, they then discover there's, surprise, surprise, there's airplanes flying around, then the noise complaints start. And many of these aerodromes have been around for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And it seems an incredibly unfair situation that we continue to limit the scope and capability of Australia's aviation infrastructure because we have people moving into areas that then bring their prejudices against it. We're going to have a little bit more time to talk about that. And I know I'm sparking an interest there in Mike. I've got to do one more introduction, Mike, and then we're going to get into tonight's conversation. That is, I've left the best until last. We're very fortunate this evening to be joined by none other than Andrew Gordon. Now, Andrew is a very interesting person to have part of this conversation because Andrew is himself a pilot, but he's also a candidate at the council elections for Lismore. He's running for a councillor's position with the council as someone who understands aviation, someone who has a thorough understanding of the value and the contribution of aviation, not just to the local economy, but to the fabric of the state and to the fabric of the nation. So I welcome Andrew to give us an overview of his background and who he is representing in today's conversation.
Oh, g'day, Ben. Thanks very much for the introduction, mate. I feel a little bit humbled by that and almost a little bit embarrassed, to be perfectly honest. Mate, I started flying in 83. I started in hang gliders and I moved through to the ultralight fraternity in light wings with Pat and John Hurd. And then I moved into drifters with Wayne Fisher. And then in 1990, I saw the light, mate, and went for the PPL. Isaac's my medical aviation doctor, and he's also my BFR certifier. So we have a great relationship with him. Now, I am running for council simply because, mate, these issues, which are dear to my heart, are the most frustrating at the moment. And there's reasons for that, and you and I touched on those reasons before, but I've just had the results of the Lismore City Council survey text to me. So I have the results in front of me right now. And it's really, really interesting because even though there's a lot of noise going on at the moment, noise about aircraft noise, when you look at the results, it pales in these communities, to be perfectly honest. So what we have at the moment is that I guess we have this green-led city council, and they make noise about certain things that aren't politically in favour in their minds, and they smokescreen it. So whether it be koalas or whether it be aircraft noise. So aircraft noise, in my mind, mate, is on the reduction. Back in the 90s, you could be 4 or 5 in the pattern waiting to land. Now, Isaac would confirm, Mike would confirm, Gary, all the guys that fly at Lismore would confirm that you could probably land anytime you want. You could almost do it by stealth if you wanted to, because there's nothing going on. Now, the results themselves tell us lots. Now, I keep on looking over to my phone because there's lots to be said, I guess. And if you want to hear it, mate, I'm happy to tell you exactly what the results of that survey are. You know, if you look at these, okay, so
yeah, mate. Hey, it's Mike. Go for it. I was getting really excited to go for it because I got the same message, and the timing of these results coming through is absolutely perfect.
Well,
and
you and
Andy,
I got them from
Andrew,
the same bloke, I'd imagine. You know,
you say him because we've both got the same information, and it's fantastic news. So you go for it.
It's fantastic. So let's look at it. 55% of respondents said that aircraft noise is not an impact. 78.9% it impacts. If it does impact, it's less than once a week. 85.2% said there's been no change in aircraft noise in the last 5 years. 83% of respondents said they want more pilot training. Only 16% of the survey said that noise was a serious issue. 16%. You know, then we go on. The key benefits were passenger flights, 94%, aeromedical, 72%, aviation training, 89% of people are in favour, 90% are in favour of the fact that it provides employment. 92%, actually 92% said they're in favour of the fact that it provides the opportunity of employment. So really, all of this stuff, mate, when you look at it, is a smokescreen. So whilst the left say that noise is the major consideration, it's not really. There's other political motives involved. And when you look at the guys that are making the noise, they came from that sphere of, you know, others. I'm not going to be too derogatory about them, but they just, I guess, don't like our way of life.
Well, Andrew, what I've seen at AOPA is I've seen just how nefarious and how dangerous the anti-airport movement can be in damaging Australia's aviation infrastructure. And a great salient recent example would be what the anti-airport lobby has done to Katoomba Airfield, just outside of Sydney, in being able to cross from Bankstown or the Sydney Basin effectively out towards Bathurst, a site which provides essential safety for pilots that are trying to cross that mountain range and that rugged territory. And I know each and every one of you, if I said to you, if you're crossing some of the most dense bushland, you know, is having a little dirt runway ideal for safety, you'd all go absolutely yes. But the anti-airport noise lobby led by the environmentals out in the Blue Mountains have basically destroyed the Katoomba airfield. And there's no doubt that Katoomba airfield will be pushed into total closure because the Department of Infrastructure aren't going to want to fund it. So this is a problem that does impact us. Now, I want to go back to Mike. Mike looked pretty excited by those statistics there. So I want to hand back over to him and just let him have a few comments on that. And then we might start going around the room and having a bit of a discussion on this issue of airport noise and where everyone sees it coming from. So Mike, over to you. Your microphone, Mike.
G'day, yeah. So, yeah, obviously Gordo just stole my thunder there. We got the text message at the same time. But I see that as a very positive result. You've got a vast majority of the community that actually wants our services here. You know, we can't let these squeaky wheels get the oil all the time. There's one particular lady that complains about our operations to the northeast of Lismore. When we looked into her, it turns out she actually represents something like 95% of the complaints in the entire region. So why are these minority groups allowed to even have an opinion? If we had an opinion on some of the other things that went on in town, that some other minority groups, they wouldn't like what we had to say either. But anyway, I think we need to focus more on this airport as what we can do with it. There's so many opportunities. There's the community said they wanted to see more freight here. We are perfectly positioned to target the corporate market with your corporate jets. There's no room for it to park at Ballina. There's heaps of room here. Lismore's always been the central point for freight. Why aren't we targeting the freight industry to get more freight aircraft into here? We've got all the facilities. We need to move on from the negativity and just push forward with just how much this airport has to offer. That's what
Look, couldn't agree with you more there, and that is often what is lost in these conversations, isn't it? And that is what is the potential of the airport that it can do for its community. And you know that classic statement. I'm always reminded of this one statement that a mile of road will take you a mile, but a mile of runway will take you anywhere in the world. And that is such a critically important and most salient point to remember, is that an airport is more than just a mile of road. It is a gateway for the region. It brings emergency services. It brings aeromedical. It brings air, the air wing of the police. It brings military in the times of serious natural disaster and emergency. It brings in the flight training industry. It brings in private aviation. Let's not lose sight that private aviation is a huge economic contributor. We just did a conversation in the last week with respect to the Cootamundra Gundagai region and the gliding clubs. The gliding club simply running a camp in town, bringing people in for 3 weeks who buy accommodation for 3 weeks. They're buying meals for 3 weeks. They're hiring cars. They're doing all kinds of really interesting things that are injecting money. And I think the value that was put on it was like anywhere upwards of $80,000 to $125,000 that can be invested into the local community for these events. The airport is a major economic driver. Nick, how do you see the situation, and how do you see council's role in bringing this type of situation to a head?
Well, I think the main thing here is, and we've talked about this in this association we've formed, is that the council has not done due diligence in consulting with the aviation industry at the airport. You know, we're the people who work there. We're the people who operate there. And if they just talk to us, they'd benefit from that wealth of information that we all have.
Nick, I'm going to jump in, because I think in the conversation, I hear this so often where I go on aviation. Aviation stakeholders will say, Ben, we're just not being consulted with. Now, we've got a pretty broad cross section of participants here. We've got private owners, businesses, etc. Just a show of hands, how many of you believe that the council are proactive in seeking your participation as stakeholders of the airport in its development of decision making that affects the outcomes at the airport? So a show of hands if you think that the council is actively and proactively pursuing an involvement of the stakeholders at the airport with respect to the decision making as to the future of the airport. Nobody. So nobody believes, and no one, I mean, let's be fair. I mean, are we genuinely saying, you can all nod and shake your heads, but we're all genuinely saying that we believe that the airport is not actively engaging with the local stakeholders at the airport on airport and aviation matters?
Mate, it's just the opposite, Ben. This is exactly what's going on. Isaac will tell you, he has an email trail from a particular councillor who says that aviation emissions are, you know, the greatest emitter of greenhouse gases. This is the force that you're dealing with. This has got nothing to do with aeroplanes flying around, mate. It's got to do with the people that are elected and who have a mandate to depopulate any way they can. I can give you a similar analogy from the airport to dams to infrastructure to growth. There's 1,000 different reasons why this council wants to see the airport closed. The most important one to them is to prevent us moving forward.
Obviously, the decisions that are being made, and I would hearken back to the introduction of fees and charges, because that's something that everybody in aviation can directly understand, and it's an issue. It's such a hot button issue that you can see my father-in-law just walking in the background there. I apologise. It's such a hot button issue that it ran so quickly throughout aviation. I mean, my phone was running crazy when the council moved through to introduce those new landing fees. I mean, on issues like that, have you been able to reach out to council, and have council demonstrated a preparedness to want to meet with aviation stakeholders to understand your opinions? And does anybody feel that they're being taken seriously in that conversation? I might start that with our private aircraft owner representative here, which is Gary. Gary, do you feel that the council are interested in your views on these issues?
Absolutely not. And to take a step further from Andrew's comments, I mean, if the council was in any ways interested in trying to make the airport profitable or try and improve the status of the airport, they would consult with the stakeholders, but they haven't done that at any stage. So I agree with Andrew's comments that the current council is trying to just drive the airport into the ground, is trying to demonstrate the airport is unprofitable. It's made that statement many times, and you know, it's if the council was fair income, they would come to the stakeholders and engage them, and I'm sure that the stakeholders would come up with many ideas and ways to make it profitable. Use the examples that Michael's even raised. I mean, nobody's even asked him what can be done. So I think the evidence is there. We've just got to open our eyes and see what the current council is trying to do.
Isaac, just before I jump across to you, mate, I'm going to jump to Isaac. I mean, Isaac, the fees and charges that were introduced at Lismore, and this is often lost, is that when these fees and charges are introduced, they have a direct and meaningful impact somewhere. Someone ultimately is paying the bill. Now, when these fees are proposed by council, I imagine that many councillors would just go, oh, well, you know, Isaac's business will pay. But it's not Isaac's business that pays, it's Isaac's customers that pay. And in the case of your business, you're operating two Beechcraft Barons, two twin-engine Beechcraft Baron airplanes, from what I understand. What type of cost addition are those fees and charges adding to your business? And what kind of impost does that then pass on to your customers? And what's the likely impact long-term that you believe you'll experience from your customers as a result of those fees?
Yeah, well, I mean, it'll be in the order of tens of thousands of dollars a year. You know, like most regional airports, Lismore had an annual landing subscription. That was one of the reasons we set up our business at Lismore. We had a predictable cost base that would allow us to compete in the market. You know, for whatever reason, with 6 weeks of notice, they decided they were going to scrap that. Of course, they gave us notice. They gave us the opportunity to submit or apply submissions to those proposals. And I did. I submitted what I thought would be the impact of my business and the longevity of my business at Lismore. In the end, I don't think that was even read, because I then met with the mayor, who had very little understanding of the detail of what I'd submitted, as did some of the other councillors when I've subsequently spoken to them. So there's a lot of lip service being played with no real intention of paying any attention to anything that we had to say anyway. We met with the mayor, who said that she was going to consult with the community about fees and charges. Of course, what she meant was they were going to consult with me about noise. We knew that, so that was a bit misleading. We attended a workshop where, again, I was given the opportunity this time to present to all the councillors, and at that forum, really all they wanted to know about predominantly was about noise. I got pointed questions from some of the councillors about noise. They weren't interested in the fees. So Unfortunately, that conversation's been hijacked by this other issue that they've been blinded by.
And Isaac, in relation to the noise complaints that the council has informed you about, has the council provided you with a quantification of those noise complaints? Have they provided you with, for example, a map, and have they pinpointed the locations on that map as to where the noise complaints come from and what the frequency of the noise complaints? Or is this a case that you're just being told there are noise complaints, but you're not being provided with any supplementary evidence to understand if there is a frequency to these noise complaints, or whether in fact these noise complaints are all being generated by one noise complainant who is effectively becoming a vexatious complainant in doing it?
I think essentially your latter point is probably correct. Yeah, it is coming from one localised place in Lismore. And there may be one more than one complainant there. I'm not sure, but there's certainly they're focused on one area. We are made aware of that, and the council did suggest some procedures or fire enabling procedures to avoid that. We're already applying those anyway. We've been in discussion with these people for well before the council got involved. We were quite proactively trying to manage this issue, and we'd done a lot of things to try and mitigate the effects on these particular people. But unfortunately, council weren't very interested in that. They're not particularly interested in hearing anything which goes against their agenda, I'm afraid.
So I'm going to bounce back to Mike. Nick, I'm going to go to Mike first. I'm going to come back to you. But Mike, Lismore Airport's not a young airport. It's not like it just turned up yesterday and opened its doors for business. It's been around for a while. And in fact, the airport community itself played a significant role in the establishment of rescue helicopter services. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Westpac Rescue Helicopter started off with a Bell 47, and Russell sitting next to me, his hangar's on the airport. He's still a stakeholder here. How long have you been here?
35 years.
He's been here 35 years. He's had the Westpac Rescue Helicopter, spent many years in his shed. He's helped them out. Everyone's been involved with helping that service get going. Obviously, it's evolved over the years and changed, but a lot of the key players are still here. I guess what sort of happened with those landing charges is that there was a bit of a movement here. There was Isaac, when it started getting a bit of momentum and doing really well with his business, there was a stakeholder that built some hangars on the airport. And then once everyone started pouring money in, the council sort of sit back and going, okay, well, we've got a few people on the hook here. Let's get them, because now they haven't got an option. So that's made pretty much all the stakeholders lose complete faith in the airport, because what are they going to do next? You can't plan on that. You can't, no business can function that way if you're just at the mercy of them changing charges and restrictions at the drop of a hat.
So I'm not aware, Mike, but does the council impose a toll for people to drive into the town?
No. It's a good analogy. No, they don't.
And do they impose a toll for people to bring a caravan into town?
Yeah, no, they don't. And one of the other guys brought this up the other day. What about boat ramps? It's exactly the same. You don't have to put $5 in the.
Just help me understand here. I mean, obviously, there's plenty of commercial trucking companies are running trucks through the middle of Lismore to transport commercial equipment to suppliers. Are trucks charged a toll for entering Lismore?
No.
So there's no, I know I'm labouring a point here, but I'm labouring a point because I know that there will be federal, state and local representatives that will watch this video, and I'll be seeing to it that this video makes its way to the Deputy Prime Minister's office, because the issues you're facing at your airport are issues that are being faced at just about every other airport in the country. But I want to be clear. Local councils would not dare impose a toll on trucks entering their township, because they understand the economic contribution of keeping the trucks rolling through the town, stopping buying fuel, stopping to buy food and all the rest of the stuff. They don't do it on caravans. They don't do it on people visiting for tourism reasons. And yet we have this bizarre situation where just 1 mile of road in the form of a runway made of the same asphalt that every other highway and every other road is made of, but just 1 mile of road seems to attract the creation of fees and charges because somehow it is different to a truck, a car, a caravan, or a boat on a trailer, or any other form of transport. And this is really at the heart of the issue, in that our aviation infrastructure, according to local councils, is somehow different to our road infrastructure, which everybody understands. I mean, everybody in every township would understand, and Mike, you're involved in helicopters there, and those helicopters, I understand, are involved in emergency service relief by way of fire operations and the rest of it. Every community understands that you wouldn't put a toll on the roads that allow the firefighters to drive to your home to put your home out if it was on fire. And yet, for some reason, our airports are attracting these fees and charges because somebody somewhere at some point decides that aviation is somehow different. And it seems to be this really bizarre situation. And I know you're agreeing with me, you're nodding your head. I'm going to bounce it back to Nick there because I know Nick's super eager to make a comment on this. Nick, is my thinking too wrong on this?
No, you're absolutely correct. And it's one of the things that I've been saying. It's just ridiculous that we get banged fees for using, we're ratepayers too. And we are one of the highest ratepayers, in New South Wales. It's ridiculous. We pay rates and get charged extra for using facilities that other people, don't get, like I said, boat ramps or something. But I just wanted to say something on the noise complaints. We know who there's only really three main people who are causing the noise complaints. Two of them only moved into Lismore in the last 2 to 3 years. So they've moved into one of the nice areas of Lismore and are now complaining that they've got aircraft noise. And the other person is 2.8 kilometres away from the runway, which is way outside the circuit area. And they're one of the major noise complainants. So we've got this small minority group of people who are revving up the council to use that as leverage to, impact on our operations. And I was talking with Mike at this earlier, we should just ignore them because it seems insignificant. The other thing is the rate charges by the council are having especially Isaac, because he's actually one of the main operators at the airport who brings in significant amount of money, and he is now being penalised for that. He's actually one of the people who brings in an incredible amount of money into the area, and now he's being penalised for doing something that's actually improving the local economy. It's just crazy.
Nick,
it's upside down economics.
Right. Yep. Nick, it's absolutely right. And that is these types of fees and charges, which are not metered on other things. I mean, in local communities, we don't put a toll on people using public toilets, and yet public toilets cost a fortune to run. If you go and grab the council's accounts and you have a look at how much money the council spends on parks and gardens, we don't charge tolls for parks and gardens. We spend a fortune. We spend a fortune on these things, but we don't, because it's all part of what we consider to be the amenity of the local community. But these kinds of erroneous fees and charges, which seem to target aviation because of a lack of understanding of the contribution that aviation make, they have a detrimental impact. Now, Mike, I know I'm targeting Mike here a bit. I'm throwing the question back to Mike. The types of charges that are being levied, what kind of impact are these charges having on your operation?
Oh, well, for ourselves, it's pretty ironic, actually. I should just pick up so there's two helicopters here. They sit on a trolley. This one gets charged $28. The Huey behind it, there, that's $50 a landing. So we don't even touch the tarmac. We land on our own trolleys, and
but what you're not telling me, Mike, and I think this is very important for the viewers. These aren't just helicopters. What are these helicopters used for?
Well, the one over the back, that's a firefighting helicopter that obviously did a lot of work in this area during the Black Summer fires. And so when it was coming back online from maintenance, we had to do, I think it was something like 6 takeoff and landings for track and balance. It's a maintenance thing. And we got a bill for, I think it was like $300 in the space of an hour of landings. I just said, well, we're not paying that, so all good.
It's incredible to believe that we've arrived at a time when aerial firefighting equipment that is essential to saving lives and protecting homes and protecting communities are being penalised by local councils.
Yeah.
I mean, you obviously, Mike, could pack up your business and you could relocate it elsewhere in the state. And by doing so, you would take away from Lismore invaluable resources that can make the difference between life and death. I mean, it seems to defy logic that the community be exposed to an outcome where that motivation could be made.
Yeah, it is. And the thing is that if you add up all these landing fees, what the total figure it represents doesn't even come close to 10% of the deficit that the council's actually claiming on this airport. So there is a massive issue with mismanagement. I could sit here for an hour and point out at least a dozen things that you're just shaking your head at, seeing how much money's been hemorrhaged in just through mismanagement or layers of management at the airport, which is just completely unnecessary. And
but Mike, I think the centre of the conversation here,
because through the mismanagement, they gouge the local operators, but they're only getting a penny in the bucket back. It's never gonna fix the issue, but they're hurting everyone, and they don't understand the knock-on effect it has. With it stops people building hangars. It affects the training school, which means it affects everything. There's going to be less people in the area, which means less money in the economy. So there's a massive knock-on effect.
Mate, I agree with you. I agree with everything you're saying, but I think that the other point in this is that the council are not levying these kinds of charges against other activities in the community where they wear significant losses to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I am yet to have a council GM or CEO or mayor explain to AOPA how it justifies burning $1 million hole in the balance sheet to maintain parks and gardens, but it can't justify burning a $200,000 hole in the balance sheet to support aviation that provides emergency relief, aerial firefighting, and all these other activities. It defies logic, and I can see our councillor, our candidate councillor here. He looks frustrated by this. Andrew, your comment on that? Microphone, Andrew. Go ahead.
Mate, I've got 1,000 things to say about that. These guys, they love targeting the airport. What about libraries, public facilities, swimming pools, those sorts of ideas? If you look at the rate of hemorrhaging that Mike has and you yourself have related to, is that the airport pales in insignificance. Public facilities, libraries, art galleries, swimming pools, airports will never pay their way, but they are vital infrastructure ideals which create a city. So if you don't have these things, you don't have city. The airport itself is a wonderful facility. It connects us with the rest of the world. Yes, it might run at a loss, but that's because they're not running it properly. Mike has said that, and it's so true. There's 1,000 things that could be done. Lismore is ideally situated to become a regional sport and educational facility of not only the North Coast, but I reckon New South Wales, Southeast Queensland. But it's just not being done because there is political ideal about emissions and those sorts of things. So
well, Andrew, they say, Andrew, you've got to be careful of the man who sits quietly in the back of the room, and that is Jeff Mathison, who's been sitting there quietly watching this conversation. And the thing that I note about Jeff is that Jeff obviously has bought his opportunity to Lismore. He's based at the airport for his aviation activity. I mean, Jeff, you could take that business, you could relocate it. These kinds of fees and charges, the attack by the anti-airport noise lobby, which, let's be honest, we call it a lobby. It might be one or two residents. Their concerns are over-amplified. Their concerns are taken far too seriously. In my opinion, weak-kneed councillor politicians who do not know how to stand up to a squeaky absolute minority to say, hey, I get you've got a problem with it, but the vast majority of the community appreciate the airport. They appreciate the service. And I believe the survey that we've discussed earlier amplifies that the vast majority of people want to see this airport be an airport and to succeed. You could take your business elsewhere. You take your business, it costs the community. There's a loss for you removing your business. What's your view on this?
Well, that's correct. I mean, For me to set up a CASA-approved maintenance facility, I had to inject a lot of money into that facility and jump through a hell of a lot of hoops to get it to where it is and established there. And I mean, why would a client want to fly in with their helicopter, be it a rescue helicopter or a private owner, to have his maintenance done when he can go another local airfield and land at half the price or a quarter of the price of what he can at Lismore? You know, why would he come to me? So for me as a business operator, you know, that's surely going to hurt me. And as Mike said, I mean, why isn't council developing this asset they got to make it what it could be? You know, like why can't there be a TAFE training school for up and coming engineers? It's perfect for it. You know, it's local to a lot of big cities, and it's quite enough to make that happen. I don't understand why it's not developed further than what it is.
Well, Jeff, it's not just about the businesses either. It's not just about the businesses who come here and they spend their money, they invest in Lismore, but let's also look about the youth in Lismore. The youth who want to be involved in aviation, the youth who want to be able to take part in aviation. You know, what kind of community are we building if when you have a range, in this case, Lismore is extremely lucky, you've got a number of significant aviation businesses that are wanting to be there, that are willing to invest into being there, but are being opposed. The youth that want to become involved in aviation are being denied that opportunity by one or two noise complainants who are over amplified. I mean, the cost loss of this is huge. I mean, Andreas, how do you see this? You're an aircraft owner, you're an AME, you're someone who's involved in maintaining aeroplanes. We know how hard it is to get young people involved in aviation. How do you see the situation if we're suddenly denying young people an access to aviation at their local airport? Oh, microphone, reset.
Sorry.
Go again.
Look, I'll take a half a step back. I went to school up in Lismore, and out of my year at school, there was 4 people that ended up in aviation. One of them flew for the RAF and went to Iraq. Another one became flight attendant, and 2 further aside from me actually joined the RAF as well as technicians. So, and we went to local flying events here in Lismore to do this. So, you know, there is a flow-on effect from this. And my son, for example, is learning to fly here as well. And obviously, you know, if he can't go here, then he has to go somewhere else, like Casino or further up the coast. And I also have friends that actually come from Brisbane down to Lismore, because Lismore is a very good training airport. And they actually spend the money here to go flying, and they stay overnight and they spend the money in town. So, you know, if all of these things are removed or the cost of that becomes too high, then they're not going to travel down here. They're just going to do it. On the terms of the actual aircraft maintenance, as soon as the fees got introduced for ultralights, drop-in business disappeared. People just didn't show up anymore. You'll find hardly any ultralights to actually come to Lismore and just fill up and go somewhere. There's just not happening. So it's more the local guys that are flying out. So that's about it. That's really what it comes down to. In terms of, you know, the costs that we've discussed, I did some quick sums. And if you take every Lismore ratepayer, residential ratepayer, and you divide it by the supposed cost of the airport, that would mean that every Lismore residential ratepayer contributes about $44 of their rates to the airport. And that's not collecting any other fees or charges at the airport. And then if you go one step further and we go, okay, what about the fuel use? What about the fossil fuel? Well, I did the sums on that as well from statistics, and it turns out that 0.15% of the total fuel use in Australia is general aviation. Granted, 22% is used by commercial, but general aviation is just not a contributor. We're just not, you know, causing any of the issues.
Look, you're absolutely correct. And what everybody needs to understand is that aviation is actually quite a responsible industry. We're not only incredibly responsible on safety, we're incredibly responsible on the environment, and we're responsible on community. We don't just recklessly fly around. And I often find myself in a situation where what I am doing is I am defending pilots on a range of bogus claims by people in the community that our aircraft are flying low and they're being reckless and they're being dangerous. And it's usually, on the whole, the vast majority, if not all, it's completely ridiculous. Aviation exists in an environment where the participants of our industry behave safely. They have very clear regulation and very clear rules of which they exist by, and they don't go about breaking them, because we as pilots, we as aircraft owners, and I know Gary as an aircraft owner and pilot would agree with this, and all the business owners that are here today, and even our pilot counsellor candidate would agree. We exist in a system where if you break the rules, there are significant penalties. There are significant penalties. So we don't go about breaking those rules. We do our best to adhere to what we are required to do. So the concept that we're flying low over houses and we're creating unnecessary, it's a nonsense. But it appears to me, as someone who is involved in this debate nationwide on a number of fronts, and right now AOPA is involved in 26. There are 26 local airport disputes going on where the local aviation community are struggling to work with local councils in establishing a good, cohesive working relationship. 26 locations. What I find in those situations is there's just a lack of understanding. Council doesn't necessarily understand, and I think it's fair to say that when these airports were transferred to local government management under the ALOPs, the local councils didn't quite know what they were inheriting. And if you look into local government structures, councils are not best prepared for managing airports. They don't understand the regulatory environment. They don't understand the complexities. They don't understand the nuances. And so as a consequence of that, from time to time, councillors come up with policies and they come up with rules and council bylaws and all the rest of the stuff that they do that then infringe on the aviation community enormously. So a greater degree of education has to happen. And we find where councils have strong local airport advisory committees, that is locations where the council work closely with the local stakeholders in a regular and consistent manner to discuss concerns and to document concerns and to create an engagement process, they succeed. And where there's no local engagement on a structured, consistent basis, it fails. And so I throw this question across to both Mike and to Nick as representatives of the airport chamber. I know I've just got that wrong. Nick's going to go, why'd you call it an airport chamber? But do we have a situation right now, Mike, where the council recognises the local aviation community, and do they have structured meetings in which they're bringing you into and they're creating an agenda and they're working through issues in trying to develop a way in which to address these concerns and to create genuine stakeholder engagement?
No, not at all. We haven't been consulted at all since we've started the business here. It's actually the opposite. It was cart before the horse. So when I bailed up a couple of the current councillors and current mayor about that last noise survey that was incredibly biased, they said, oh, well, that was step one. Now we're going to come and talk to you. And I said, well, straight away, that's wrong. If you had to talk to us about the noise survey, we could have informed you that, that it was incredibly biased and you're not actually responsible for the noise complaints. There's procedures in place for that, and fly neighbourly agreements are already in place and everyone's abiding to that. So consultation is key. Come and chat with us, that's all.
Well, I think you are correct. Consultation is absolutely key. And we look at airport environments, even like Cootamundra where we've got a recently formed airport advisory committee and the council's working through those processes. Sure, we still fall short of the mark on certain issues, but there is a process in place to encourage stakeholder engagement, and that is actually critical if we're going to work towards resolving the problem. Nick, the question to you, should we be getting this in place? Should we be working towards this outcome? What can we be doing to encourage the council to arrive at an outcome where we do in fact have a airports advisory framework that's going to allow us the level of interaction needed in order to make smart and sensible decisions to support aviation?
Well, this is exactly the reason why we started the Lismore Airport Business and Aviators Association, is to provide a body that the council can communicate with. there used to be an airport consultative committee or something a few years ago, and for some reason that went by the wayside. So what we've done is put something together ourselves, and this is why we've been trying to work with Andrew, who's here today, and Steve Krieg, and also some of the other councillors starting to come around too. And the reason is that we now have a group that the council can talk to. They don't have to go talking to individuals. They don't have to just ignore us. We have a group that has a wealth of knowledge and years and years of experience that the council can use to help drive decisions that will support the aviation industry in the correct manner and in an appropriate way. And if they consult with us, they'll get a much, much better outcome than the way they're doing it at the moment. It's that simple.
Okay, well, our conversation has hit the 1 hour limit, which we have to cut it off because I'm sure we could talk all night and we could bang out so many different areas of this conversation. It's crazy. So what I'm going to offer is everyone a last word for you to put forward any comment or statement that you would like to put forward, understanding that I'll be sending this through to the council and all the councillors, council CEO, general manager, director of planning. I'll be sending it through to state government representatives. I'll be sending it through the Deputy Prime Minister's office so that your comments that you make tonight are directed at those individuals. What would you like to see happen? How should you like to see it happen? What is the opportunity cost of it not happening? What is your pitch for a better outcome at this location? And tonight I'd like to start the final word session with our councillor candidate himself, Mr. Andrew Gordon. So you have the floor. Go ahead.
What you've got to remember is that the survey conducted by Lismore City Council shows that 16% of the people that participated, I don't know how many it was, said that noise was a consideration. So that means that there is 84% of the population that is in favour. 83% they said they want more pilot training. So this is not a noise consideration. This is a political consideration by the members of our council right now. And I can tell you on December 4, that is about to change.
Short and succinct and to the point, Andrew. I do thank you for your time this evening. Next is going to be Isaac Flanagan. Isaac, you have the floor.
Yeah, I share Andrew's thoughts there. I think it's really encouraging that the community, we've always had solid support from the community. Unfortunately, it appeared to have changed, but I think that was a superficial council issue. And with the community support, hopefully we can come up with some better arrangement than we have now. Hopefully before any of us have to close our businesses and move elsewhere. So yeah, I'm looking forward to a change as well in light of those findings in that survey.
Okay, next one is going to be Andreas. Andreas, your final word for this evening.
Look, I think Nick said it all. Consultation, I think, is the key. We just need to establish a working relationship with the council, or let me rephrase it, the council needs to actually have a working relationship with all the stakeholders at the airport. There's a lot we can do, and it would be really nice to move forward. 15 years of frustration is not going to go away overnight, but it would be nice if we can move forward from here.
Thank you, Andrew. And Jeff, your final thoughts for this evening.
Yeah, I'm just on board with what the other guys say, mate. It's just for the key personnel on the council to come down and speak with the business owners and get their take on what's going on and communicate with them in the front line. Because we're all trying to make a buck too, and they're not making it very easy at all.
And that's what it's about, isn't it? I mean, if you're a business and you're in the area, you're trying to make the business work, you're trying to create employment, you're trying to create the opportunities. Well said there. Okay, that puts us down to Nick. Nick, never a man short of a word.
Well,
your final word.
Okay, aviation's been significant in Lismore for 100 years since the first trial email service happened here, which they commemorated. It'd be good to see us going strong for another 100 years. we've got the opportunity to be a hub of aviation education and just general aviation industry here. If the council got on board, talked to us, and moved in the right direction, we'll easily be going strong for another 100 years.
Absolutely. Rich history, long-serving, an industry capable of delivering jobs and capability for the region. So it's absolutely worth supporting. And obviously an individual close to my heart, aircraft owner and pilot, Gary. What are your final thoughts on the topic tonight?
I think from my point of view, we've brought together the group of stakeholders and interested parties, and now the challenge for the council or what would-be councillors is to reach out to this group and see what ideas they can bring to the table to improve the operation of the airport, and thereby improve the amenity for the whole community. I think that is the challenge for the incoming councillors.
Salient points. Mike, I've saved the best till last.
Yeah, I think I've said most of the way I feel about it all, but I think the biggest mistake that it's been made recently is that aviation's a large industry. It's not. Within 2 degrees of separation, I reckon everybody in this industry knows everybody. And so because it's a small industry, people talk. And if you look after existing stakeholders, more will come. More people will build more hangars, which means more jobs, which means more, more everything. There's more aircraft here means, there's more...
dollars.
It's just look after your existing stakeholders and more will come. It's quite basic.
Okay. Well, look, thank you very much, everybody, for your contributions for this evening's broadcast. The purpose of tonight's broadcast is to start a conversation as to what is happening at Lismore, to try and understand what's happening from the local aviation stakeholders' perspective and to get that conversation going. Andrew, we wish you all the best with your council election. It's great to see aviation people who are putting up their hand at council election saying, hey, what about aviation? These issues are important to our local community. We do wish you all the best in your election, and fingers crossed we are able to interview you in the weeks to come as councillor, Andrew Gordon, and to find out what you're going to be able to do from within. Thank you, everyone, otherwise, for joining us for the conversation. It is the most important thing that we can do is to start the conversation, to speak publicly about the issues that are facing the aviation industry and not be fearful. We've got a lot to be proud of as an aviation industry. Our heritage, our roots run deep. The contribution we make to the overall national economy and to the fabric of society of Australia is enormous. It is worthy of a conversation we should be proud of, and we should never, ever shy away from speaking up on these issues because aviation is critical to the nation of Australia and to our future. So I thank each and every one of you for your time this evening, gentlemen.
And we thank you, Ben. You're an absolute credit to the industry. And we really appreciate you helping us out on the issues and being our voice and putting us all together.
Thanks, mate. I do appreciate it. Well, look, there you go. You've heard from the voices of the people at Lismore Airport. They are the stakeholders. They're the people, the boots on the ground, the very individuals who are trying to make their businesses work and trying to contribute towards the society, not only in their local area, but their contribution to the state. It is important work that they do. It's work that needs to be supported. It's work that we need as a nation to get behind. Aviation can play a key role and should be playing a key role in taking Australia forward. We should not be putting aviation on the back burner, and it requires councils, councillors and council staff to develop a clear understanding of just how important aviation is, but how fragile it is at the same time. Aviation needs support, not because it's incapable of delivering, but because it is so valuable. Support that will enable it to grow and enable it to foster. And I'd like to believe in the best of the Lismore Council. I'd like to believe that the council wants to see the aviation industry succeed, and I think that the survey results which were announced by several of the members that were part of tonight's discussion speak volumes, that there is an overwhelming support for the airport. There is an overwhelming support for flight training. There is an overwhelming and obvious support for aerial firefighting and emergency services. Lismore and the city of Lismore and the people of your region, let me tell you this, your airport is invaluable. A mile of highway will only take you a mile, but a mile of runway will take you anywhere in the world. And an airport lost is an airport lost. It will never be reopened. You have something incredibly precious in your region, something worth protecting, something worth the effort of ensuring that even the loudest minority, the loudest individual within your community who may have set their entire life's ambition on seeking the closure should not be given the oxygen to impact on the benefit that this airport creates for so many throughout the region. I'm Ben Morgan, Chief Executive of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, and I really do appreciate you joining us for this Facebook Live broadcast with the members of the Lismore Airport community. If you do support AOPA, if you support our efforts to try and bring a voice to the thousands of people throughout the aviation industry on all of these issues, whether it's an issue impacting a private pilot, whether it's an issue impacting a commercial aviation business, or whether it's an issue impacting an airport community, AOPA is an organisation that stands at the ready to give a voice. We will fight for you. Our entire mission is your freedom to fly without unnecessary cost and restriction. The work that we do is essential in keeping aviation working in Australia. We are on watch 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We are here. We're here to ensure that Australia has an aviation future. So I'm asking you for a favour. On the eve that I sit here, the night before I get married, when I'm supposed to be with my in-laws and family, I'd like you to do me a favour. And I've been with you all for 6 years, fighting for this industry hand, tooth and nail, on private pilot medical reform, on aircraft maintenance reform, on the repeal of Cessna SIDS, on the protection of airports, on the stopping of unnecessary airport fees and charges. I'll fight for you. But we need your support. We need you to be part of this association. We need you to be part of AOPA. I can only do what I do with your financial support. If we don't have your financial support, we can't make this happen. So I'd like to put up on screen how to become a member. You can join AOPA by going to www.aopa.com.au/membership. For just $159, you can join this association and you can be part of the largest movement in Australia to protect aviation and to see to it that we have a future, that aviation has a future, that our business community have a future, but more importantly, that young people coming into this world will have a future in aviation, a future that they deserve. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. I look forward to seeing you all again next week. But next week I'll be married. So thank you very much and take care.
Yeah, good one, mate.
Yeah.